Welcome to Bay West Church. We're so thankful that you've chosen to join us on this Mother's Day, and we're so thankful for all the ladies that exist on the planet that have poured into us, from moms to aunts to cousins to friends to bosses to coworkers. We're so thankful for you and all that you do for us. We just want to give you a shout out today. We wish we could be with you and give you like flowers and stuff like that, but unfortunately we're still online only. But hang on, we do have special things in store for you throughout the service today. If you're with us today for the first time, we'd love you to click on the connection card link and let us know that you're here. Just put in your name and an email address. Also, if you respond to the sermon in some way, that's the way you'll do it, by clicking on the link, and we'll do our best to catch up with you. If you decide to accept Christ, that's the place to do it. If you would like to get a call from a pastor or you have a prayer request, that's the place to do it as well. If you haven't joined a life group yet, we are meeting on Zoom, so please click the link that says join a life group, and we'll sign you right up through that, and someone will be in touch with you as well. If you haven't joined our Parents Kids Zone group, please do. There's great curriculum and stuff going up there, and we are planning diligently, talking about how things will be when we do come back one day. That's not super soon, but it will be at some point. So we're looking forward to that day as well. As always, you can follow my sermon notes. Well, actually, I'm not going to have any today because it's going to be a little bit different. So you'll like it. It'll be cool. So just hang on, see how that's going to be. And if you would like to give your tithes and offerings, obviously, you can always do that securely through the Give link, or you can send it by check to Bay West Church, 100 Emerson Drive, Northwest, Palm Bay, Florida, 32907. Let's get together. Let's put everything aside, and let's begin by singing praises to God in worship.
All of creation, all of the earth, make straight a highway, path for the Lord. Jesus is coming soon. Call back the sinner, wake up the saint. Let every nation shout of your fame. Jesus is coming soon. Like a bride waiting for her groom, we'll be a church ready for you. Every heart longing for our King, we sing, even so come, Lord Jesus, come. Even so come, Lord Jesus, come. There will be justice, all will be new. Your name forever, faithful and true. Jesus is coming soon. Like a bride waiting for her groom, we'll be a church ready for you. Every heart longing for our King, we sing, even so come, Lord Jesus, come. Even so come, Lord Jesus, come. So we wait for you. God, we wait, you're coming soon. So we wait for you. God, we wait, you're coming soon. Like a bride waiting for her groom, we'll be a church ready for you. Every heart longing for our King, we sing. Like a bride waiting for her groom, we'll be a church ready for you. Every heart longing for our King, we sing. Even so come, Lord Jesus, come. 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 So we wait for you. God, we wait, you're coming soon. So we wait for you. God, we wait, you're coming soon.
Let the King of my heart be the mountain where I run, the fountain I drink from. Oh, yes. is my song. Let the King of my heart be the shadow where I hide, the ransom for my life. Oh, he is my song. You are good, good. Oh, 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 let the King of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, he is my song. You are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good.
You're never gonna let me down. 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 'Cause you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good.
When the night is holding on to me, God is holding on. And when the night is holding on to me, God is holding on.
Well, happy Mother's Day. We just want to honor and encourage all you ladies out there. It's so tough. I wish we could be together. We could give you a flower. We could have you stand and encourage you and do some special things for you with our kids. But, Mother's Day is kind of a tough subject sometimes. I mean, you have moms who are new moms and they're excited, and you have moms that have been moms for a little while and they're dealing like right now with distance learning and all the challenges that those bring. We have all kinds of moms that are learning to release their kids into young adulthood. and those who have kids who have flown the nest, and you're trying to navigate that relationship. Sometimes our relationships with our moms are close. Sometimes they're strained a little bit at times, depending on where we are. And then sometimes, sadly enough, they're estranged, where we've got some things between us that we need to settle. Mother's Day is also tricky because there's some of us who've lost our mom. This will be my second Mother's Day without my mother, who died almost 2 years ago. And it's left a little bit of a void at times in our life. I remember my dad, when around the time of year that my grandmother passed away, my dad would always be a little bit depressed around that day. So it's hard sometimes for people. There's some people out there ladies who wanted to be moms, and you're trying to become moms, and it hasn't happened yet, and you wonder, will it ever happen? There's some people out there that I want to be a mom, but you've not even taken the step of marriage yet, and you don't even know who that's going to be to begin. There are even some moms out there that you have kids, and you're raising kids by yourself, and we want to salute you because you are both mom and dad. For whatever that circumstance is, we want to encourage you. And some of you guys, I want to tell you, any of you, though, that here's the thing. No matter where you are, you're making an impact on people's lives. And we want to encourage you for all that you are. And I was thinking, what can I do? What can I do to encourage you? We can't really get out the flower. I can't come to your house, all that type of stuff. You probably wouldn't want me to because, you won't. I don't have corona, but you wouldn't know. Who knows? But I thought, here's what I'll do. I'm going to give you a gift today to share with you. And what I want everybody, if you've got someone in mind that's a mom or someone that's special, if you're in the room with them, I want you to point them out. If they're on the phone, you can get them on the phone right now. You can pause this video if you want to and go call your mom if you can. If you can't call your mom, if you're like me, then maybe do like I do. I'm going to get alone sometime today, and I'm going to give this gift to my mom. But I want you to join me. I want you to stand up. Moms, you can stay seated unless you are going to be joining in giving presents to mom, as we go. But here we go. You know the drill once we get rolling, but you got to participate. That's the whole thing. So everybody up, ready? All right, let's do it. Yeah, you too. Get up. That's right. Here we go. Boom, 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 boom. I've got sunshine on a cloudy day. Sing it out to her. Here we go. You're great, moms. When it's cold outside, I've got the month of May. See what I did there? It's May. Here we go. Come on, let me hear you. Well, I guess you'd say, what can make me feel this way? My girl, talking about my girl, ooh, ooh. Moms, we appreciate you so much. Thank you for everything you're doing. Ladies, we appreciate you for pouring into us and putting up with us and for all that is coming. I want to do something a little bit different today. I want to get a little bit different perspective, so I went out and got a heavy hitter to be a part of our services today. I went and got the best to have a discussion about some moms in the Bible and some lessons that we can learn from them, not just about parenthood and motherhood, but about our life. So let's join that discussion now.
We're just here today on Mother's Day and want to just get a perspective from a mom. So I thought, I know the best mom that I know, and that would be my wife, Katie. So I thought we would just kind of talk about some of the lessons that she's learned from some impactful moms in the Bible, So I just kind of thought in this little interview, I just asked you first, what's the weirdest Mother's Day sermon you've ever heard?
Well, I guess I shouldn't tell probably which church it was,
yeah.
Or who it was that gave it, but one Mother's Day, a guest preacher stood up and he was going to preach about Mrs. Noah.
It was not me, by the way.
No, it wasn't you. You were still doing music at the time. So Mrs. Noah. And he made the point that, we don't know her name. There's not a lot about her in the Bible, but that she had a lot of important things to say. And so my mind started going with him, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I could see that, But the sermon was kind of a flop.
Yeah.
But
It lasted
but
about 10 minutes and he left.
But I've always remembered that story. And honestly, I think there is a lot to be said for Mrs. Noah. We'll call her Mrs. Noah because we don't know her name. Because when you go back and look at the history of that Genesis 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, that story, you realize that it took a long time to build the ark. They're estimated anywhere from 55 to 75 years. Noah's sons would have been around 100. And I remember 100 years old then was not 100 years old today. He was 600 when the flood started, and so his sons would have been around that 100-year age, but they would have been really young when it got started. And even if he had them to help, it would have they didn't have their neighbors to help. People were laughing at him, so it was really a family effort. So she would have really had to have been a part of that, building the ark, feeding the people.
Well, it must have been hard for her as well, because she's bearing the same stigma that Noah's bearing. And when they were younger, she probably had to help, Noah do some stuff. All that whole journey was hers as well.
It would have been very, very isolating because, as she went into whatever village near where they lived or saw other people, they were even taking her children into town. I can just imagine, the stigma of her husband was on them as well. And then you think about the actual trip in the ark. So, our kids are kind of teenage, elementary age, but when I think about, I can project forward into the future. How would it be to be in an enclosed space for a year with my husband, my 3 sons, 3 daughters-in-law, and I'm sure they all got along really well.
Oh yeah.
But 3 daughters-in-law, and then, a whole host of every kind of animal and bug, and we don't know if she liked animals and bugs, but, and then being responsible as the 8 humans on that vessel for feeding not just themselves, but all the animals, and for a year trapped.
Yeah, because she really took the full gamut from during this time, was from when her kids were young till they were adults and married, and had to run the full gamut right there with the whole thing.
Right.
So.
And then starting a new life. So, once they got
not
off.
to mention the epic kind of worldwide catastrophe type of thing with the flood, which is stressful in and of itself.
Well, and you think about when they got off the ark.
Oh my goodness, yes.
That was it. It was just them, the 8 of them. And so being the elder woman in that situation, having to be the one to teach her daughters-in-law how to live and how to raise children and all of that. There was a lot on her. So, her name wasn't shared, there's not a lot about her, but she had to have played an integral role.
Well, without her, you think the kids, you think the support she gave Noah, you think about for the wise words for the daughters-in-law, it would have been a very different story if it was not for her.
Right.
That's true. That's very true. So Mrs. Noah, even though we don't know a lot about her, there she has a lot of impact, on the Bible story. What about another mom that's been important?
Well, there are a lot of mothers mentioned in the Bible, some named, some unnamed. There's really kind of the good, the bad, and even the ugly. And we won't necessarily talk about those today, but I think probably I will mention one of those. It's kind of on the bad side. Not that she was a bad mom, but the story about her in the Bible is not necessarily a positive story. And that is the mother of James and John, the disciples of Jesus. There's a story recorded in Matthew 20 that says she came to Jesus and said, give me what I ask. And he said, what do you want? And she said, these 2 sons of mine, James and John, let them sit at the right and the left hand. I want you to say right now that they're going to get to be your right and left hand man in your kingdom.
Wow. Yeah.
Give them a place of honor. And, it's not a horrible thing for a mom to ask, hey, give my son the promotion. Let them, they've shown, I want the best for them. And so let them be in those best spots. So, but Jesus' reply actually kind of tells us that James and John were right behind her. She was kind of just the front man for that request. And Jesus told them, look, you don't even know what you're asking. Those spots are reserved for whoever my Father has reserved them for. But, being my right and left hand man is not going to be necessarily a place of honor. It's going to be a place of struggle and suffering. Yeah. And so, she that was not necessarily a positive thing for her, but I really think that relates to us today as moms, because we want the best for our children, and there's nothing wrong with that. We want them to have the best education.
Well, as parents as well, not
Right.
just mom, all of us.
Right. Best, when it comes to nutrition, education, clothes, house, activities, we want them to have the best. But sometimes what God wants for them is not the same best that we have in mind. And
Yeah.
sometimes He actually has intended for them to walk through struggle and walk through pain. And, if we always just want the best for them, sometimes we can actually get in the way
Yeah.
of the growth opportunities that God has for our children by allowing them to walk through some hard things.
Well, today the buzzword is all helicopter parent. And they would talk about helicopter parents are people who just hover over their kids and try to guide every little part of their life. And sometimes we can forget that as parents, it's not our life, it's their life. And how do we guide them in a right principle, but then kind of push the bike and let it go rather than hold the bike all the way down, And I think that's important, and especially when they get into adult lives like James and John were. It's hard when you want the best for your kids. You want to kind of step in and use your influence, but you can't always do that. Always do that, and it's not the best for them. We have to trust the Lord.
Right.
So.
And I think about that as James and John were adults at the time, maybe young adults, but that's kind of that stage when our kids hit the adolescent years and the young adult years in motherhood, where they're becoming more independent and they're getting more freedom, but we still are wanting to shape and mold and pave everything smoothly. And it's really hard. I know it was hard on my mom, and it's hard for us as we're seeing our kids get older to start loosening those reins and allowing them to become independent. And we see sometimes they're heading straight into struggle, and sometimes that's exactly what God has in mind for them.
Well, it's hard to realize that for a lot of us, when you look at the disciples of that day, you're talking maybe Gen Z millennial that we look at right now, and they were the ones that Jesus was entrusting to change the world.
Yeah.
And they were going to go through some hard things, and so it was necessary, for mom to kind of, okay, I'll back off, you do your thing. What about, is there another one in the Bible that you can think of?
There's actually a mother that is very frequently talked about on Mother's Day, and that's Hannah, who is Samuel's mom. Her story is found in 1 Samuel 1 and 2. And usually it's, the front side of the story is what's told very often. Hannah was not able to have children, and so she came and prayed, poured her heart out, and Eli the priest saw her and said, God's heard your request, and when, she returned, he said within a year you'll have a baby, and she did. But in fact, there's a verse that I've seen on social media posted, for this child I have prayed. I've seen it put up in nurseries and things. But the second half of that story, and it's particularly that verse, the second half of that verse, it talks about, about her giving him back to God. Yeah. So when she prayed, and when Eli saw her praying, what she was praying was, God, if you will give me a child, then I will give him back to you, and he will serve you all his days. So now, I'm not, disclaimer here, I'm not saying that you need to drop your 3-year-old at the doors of the church.
No.
Please don't do that.
No, especially not right now with COVID-19. No,
right.
So.
But, things were different back then, but she had made that vow, but that's literally what she did. She brought her 3-year-old when he'd just been weaned, and brought him to Eli the priest and said, this is the child I was praying for him. And I love the way the ESV translation of the Bible puts, I am lending him to the Lord.
Yes.
Some other translations say dedicating, but that literally, I think the word lending, or he is lent to the Lord. That has a better picture. Like I'm gonna, God gave him to me, but he's out of my hands now. What an incredible step for a mom. And I mean, that was at age 3. I can't even imagine how hard that was. But at any age and stage, for us to let go and allow our children to be used to serve the Lord. I was thinking about this story, and it reminded me of a summer when I was in college when God called me to go to China over the summer to teach English with our university, a team from our university. And
we were engaged at the time, I believe. Was that true?
We were
Yes,
engaged. And my mother, I never really heard this from her beforehand, but she really struggled with letting me go for an entire summer, halfway around the world, somewhere where she wouldn't be able to get a hold of me, very easily at all, and that she wouldn't be able to see me. She wouldn't know if I was okay. She didn't know anybody over there, and one of the sweet ladies in our church really just encouraged her, and she was able to let me go with the picture that of holding me loosely.
Yeah.
And I've always said that when people have asked, how could your parents let you move your family halfway across the country, with your husband and their grandchildren, and I said, my parents always held us loosely because they know that we are really, when you talk about loaning, our children are just loaned to us from God.
Very much true.
For amount of time. And we have that influence and investment in them, but then, we loan them back to God because they are going to have their own time of ministry and opportunity. And if we don't let them have those opportunities, we're not following the example of Hannah, but she really sets a good example for us for allowing our children to have a relationship with the Lord, allow them to do things that may not seem safe to us, allow them to go out for Him, knowing that He's going to protect them.
And so much with her, she's such an example of faithfulness and integrity with your word, and then living that out in front of her child. Because when you consider who Samuel was, he was so impactful. In that time with Eli, in the history of Israel, in the choosing of David to be king, and navigating that whole Saul David time frame there, what an integral part in the lineage of Jesus. And it all comes back, a lot of it, to Hannah's faithfulness to follow what she told God that she would do and commit, and not knowing that she would ever have another child.
Right, because it says, at the time she just had him. And
to
now,
give what you prayed to God for. Okay,
right,
and I got 3 years.
Here's
okay,
this
I give it back.
Right, exactly. Now later on it says that God blessed her and her husband with 5 more children. But at the time when she took Samuel, it was the one. That was the one, and she gave him back and fulfilled her vow, and that really took a lot of integrity on her part. You're right.
That reminds me of a story when we were in a church and we were going through a building campaign, and there was a couple, they were a little bit older, they're younger than us now, of course, but they had not been blessed with children, and they were saving money to adopt because they were told that they could not have kids. And they had saved a good amount of money, and then they really felt during this drive for the building that God was telling them, you need to give that money to the building. And they were like, hey, we've been saving this prayerfully and everything. But they took the leap of faith, and they gave that money, and within a month and a half, Leslie found out she was pregnant. Yeah. God always knows. We think we're giving up our dreams, but we're only opening the door to the dreams that God has for us. Great words from moms in the Bible, and so many more that move things along. Thank Katie for sharing with us today.
Those are some amazing lessons from the lives of 3 women in the Bible. And there's so many more that we could list and listen to. Thank you, Katie, for sharing with us about that. In 1 Corinthians 11:1, Paul says, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. And it occurred to me that the biggest impact that you and I will make in this earth is probably not just alone the things that we say or the momentary pointed actions that we do to teach, but it's by the example that we set with our lives as a whole. As I was listening and processing all of that, the thought occurred to me that in a time and a culture that tells us that if you want to make an impact, you've got to get your name out there. You've got to promote yourself, self-promote. We hear that so much. You got to put your stamp on it if you want to make a difference. We find out that Mrs. Noah tells us that that's not true. That you can make a pivotal impact at a crucial time in history and no one even know your brand. When you think about James and John and their mother, she was trying to do the best she could to further her kids in the right way. She was trying to get them, hey, I want them to be right up there with Jesus, and she was trying to honor them as they requested that of her. But what this shows us is that even though you make a misstep, even though you make a faux pas, when you're doing it to follow Jesus, he can take that and turn it into something wonderful that teaches many people. You know, as parents, as mentors, as friends, we all have people that, you know, look up to us in some way or another. At times, we're going to have to let them go make their own mistakes and be willing to help pick up the pieces and talk through and process with them as they will let us, because God has something for their lives, and we need to trust him for that. And that leads us to Hannah. I think what a wonderful example of integrity. You know, that's something that we all could learn from, is in trusting God with our most precious dreams. I can imagine her going to God and begging him for something that she had wanted for so long, and God to give it to her, and her to turn right back around and hand it over to God. But you know what I can't imagine even more is the Bible story without the prophet Samuel. And without her faithfulness to trust God and her integrity to obey him, it would have been a very different story, because imagine him navigating the time that he did. I can't imagine the Bible without him. And that's something for us to understand. In our lives as we follow Christ, we have to put him above all. We have to trust God with the deepest parts of us and say, you know what? I love you more. And like I said, when we do that, we may feel like we're closing the door to our dreams, but in all honesty, we're just opening it wider to the bigger dream that God has for us. Now, some of you out there, you may not understand really what I'm saying. You might be a mom, or you might be just watching with your mom today, or you may pick this up on a podcast much later. But what we understand when we talk about good, and we talk about wise, and we talk about success, all of this eternally is cast in the pursuit of Jesus Christ, trying to reconnect with God. And you don't have that in your life because you've never begun that relationship. You know, we've all done something wrong. We've all sinned, which is basically just done something different than God would have us do it, because he's the standard of good everywhere. And when that happens to us, we break a relationship with God in that, and we can't be mended by anything we can do. The Bible says that our righteousness, our good works, our best works of the most awesome person on the planet are as filthy rags compared to God's righteousness. We have no chance. But God gave us a chance. He sent Jesus to live on earth as a human, and he did, and he died a cruel death to pay for the penalty that comes from our sin. And when he did that, he allowed us to glom on to his righteousness and to his sacrifice, where we can turn to him and say, like, I trust you, I follow you, and we can commit our lives to follow him and proclaim him as the Lord, boss, the manager, the owner of our life. And we can be reconnected to God and find our purpose and our direction once again. You know, if that's you and you haven't started a relationship with Christ, it's very simple. It's understanding who God is by saying, hey, I realize you're the blessed controller and creator of all things. I realize that I've sinned against you. I've made a mistake. I can't fix it. I can't go back in time and change it. I have. I've tried on my own to fix my life, and it seems to always end up not quite what it's supposed to be. And I want to reconnect with you. And I trust you that you sent your son Jesus. I trust that he died on the cross, that he was fully God, fully man, and that he rose again on the third day, and now is there to intercede, to help me out in my relationship with you. And I want to take part of that. So God, I commit my life to you today, and I trust you as the Lord and the boss and the Savior of my life. And when you make that decision, you are now a Christ follower. And what I would love for you to do, if you made that decision today, make sure you click on the connection card link and let us know that you accepted Christ today. And we would love to help you do that, help you follow Christ, because this is just the beginning of the journey. It's not the end. I'd also like to say thank you for all of you who joined with us today. I'd like to say Happy Mother's Day one more time. I'm not going to sing again, I promise. That's one laugh too many. But I'd like to say thank you again for joining us today, and we hope that you have a wonderful rest of the day and a wonderful week, and that you come back next week. We've got a special guest next week, another special guest speaker next week who's going to share with us, and you will not want to miss it. I'll tell you that right now. And so we will see you next week. And in 2 weeks, we're going to start our series, The Real Battle. And we're going to be surprised at the battle that you're in right now. But we're going to help you know what it is, identify where it is, identify how to win it, and how to defend yourself in the middle of it. Not only that, but to move on ahead on the offensive. We'll see you guys next week. Have a wonderful day.